uh, we'll discuss the Chris Paul trade in a second, but you go to New Orleans and you play a couple seasons for the Hornets, sign an offer sheet, max offer sheet with Phoenix, and New Orleans matches, and you've got to go back to New Orleans. And I remember this vividly. And I looked it up this morning because I was like, I just want to make sure I get the quote right. And I got it right. Phoenix is just where my heart is now. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That experience of being a restricted free agent, and I don't know the backstory on that and why Phoenix was so important, but that experience of being a restricted free agent and not really having a free agent market when you're restricted. When you went back, like, where was your heart at then? When you had no choice. This is not a knock because this happens all the time to restricted guys. Where was your heart at then?
I would say what really hurt me during that time was I got injured early on in the season, and now I missed a bunch of games. So, of course, I signed an offer sheet for Phoenix because, I mean, it showed that they wanted me. They gave me an offer, and I was tinkering. Like, I don't think there was an offer like that in New Orleans at the time, but I was kind of hopeful because both situations were pretty similar. It was both rebuilds. So I was like, you know what? Maybe this situation might work out if I sign this offer sheet. Maybe that I could go to Phoenix then, but it just didn't work out that way. And I kind of knew that New Orleans was going to bring me back. And I would say the only good situation during that time was, you had Monty, that was a good coach, and then a couple years later, we went to the playoffs. So it was like, but of course, during that time when I signed an offer sheet, I was like, man, I'm very hopeful to go to Phoenix at the time.
I also signed an offer sheet as a restricted free agent. It was like, truthfully, I loved Orlando. It was not like anything against Orlando, but it was an opportunity to go to the Bulls where I was going to start for the first time in my career. Instead, Orlando matched, and I went back to being the eighth guy and never really moved out of that role until Stan left. And that was like, I've talked about it with Stan. I talked about it a ton with him then. Like, there was just no pathway for me to ever like have a different role with him. And I understood it, but man, 7 days on my honeymoon. That's how long I had to wait. 7 days on my honeymoon. And that time period, I think you're right. You're hopeful. And then when it gets like day 5 or 6, you're like, nah, I'm going back. I'm going back.
Yeah, man, because every time I go to New Orleans, I get booed and they don't understand the business and everything because it had nothing to do with the fans or really the city. It was just that the organization at the time, it just wasn't right for me. I didn't feel like they were really invested into me. But we went there, stuck it out, was there for 5 years, and went to the playoffs. So I mean, I don't know what they can be mad at, but
do you in 16 years, do you ever reflect backwards? Like, have you caught yourself with any what ifs in your career?
yes,
You have.
yeah.
What if the CP trade doesn't go through, or does go through, I should say, and he goes to the Lakers, stay in Clippers? Maybe
Yeah,
he played 10 years for the Clippers, right?
you're right. Because I really did feel like I would have been there almost my whole career.
What's the biggest what if for you?
One, maybe that trade. Two, those injuries in New Orleans because I felt like I could have had a better career in New Orleans.
You were essentially being load managed, right, in New Orleans with the knee injury stuff.
Not necessarily load managed. I just had an injury and a surgery every year when I was in New Orleans. That was the problem.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so much management. It was just more. I just had some just freakish injuries.
Yeah. When you went to Houston and you go to play for Mike D'Antoni, can you enlighten us to what it's like playing for Coach D'Antoni, the whole experience?
What I like about D'Antoni, his offense is very simple. It's all about playing fast, playing downhill, and just kind of play the right way. And what I like about is his demeanor. He never gets rowdy, and that's what I really think his demeanor helped those Rockets teams because he let us play freely. He at least kind of tells the right way to do things, and I think he worked out well with those teams.
Yeah, you got Sixth Man of the Year in 2016, 2017. I was a free agent in 17, and I've talked with Daryl about this privately. And Daryl and I and my agent at the time, we had some miscommunication. I thought there was a 4-year offer sheet. Daryl said it was only 3. So I ended up going to Philly. But I talked with D'Antoni on a park bench in Brooklyn Bridge Park about an hour before I made my decision because I wanted a longer deal and I was only looking at 1-year deals from Philly. And 2 things stood out about that conversation. Number 1, he said to me, I want every guy that ever plays for me to have their career year with me. I was like, damn, I like that. And the second thing was, I was like, how much am I going to actually play? Because you already have Eric Gordon. And he, to his credit, he was like, I'm going to play you these minutes and Eric these minutes. And then you'll last 6 minutes of the second quarter, it's anybody's time. Could be you guys together. And then he was, here's my plan with James and Chris. Like he had already mapped out the rotation. Right. He's like, what'd you play last year? I was like, 28 minutes. He's like, there's your 28 minutes right there. I was like, oh, damn.
Yeah.
But I would have liked it, I think, especially at that stage of my career, because you guys were all older and D'Antoni, you don't practice.
Yes.
Right. So any expectation around night to night, just you play a game, you go do your work, and then you go play another game.
Yeah, and that was new for me. That was new for me when I remember we went on a 12 to 14 game winning streak, and we weren't practicing, and we weren't really watching too much film. We watched 5 minutes of film, and then he'd be like, "Hey, it's done. I want you to be ready for games. I want you to only think about the games." And I was like, man, that was just a different. And then you're really refreshed. Like your mind's refreshed and your body's ready for games.